Welcome to the bell curve. Now, every so often, a game arrives with a pitch that sounds deceptively simple. Humanity has been wiped out and the machines have won. And as the last surviving human, your solution to the apocalypse is time travel. You head back into the past with one objective: stop extinction before it happens. Simple. Well, sort of. Because Ascend to Zero takes that premise and builds an entire roguelike around one central idea. You only have 30 seconds. And somehow, those 30 seconds can feel both absurdly short and strangely generous, depending on what you're doing. That single design decision is what immediately separates Ascend to Zero from a crowded field of roguelikes and survivor-style games. Now, for context, the last game in this genre that truly grabbed me was Halls of Torment. That game had me hooked for weeks. So when I loaded up Ascend to Zero, plugged in the Xbox controller, and immediately felt that familiar rhythm returning, I wasn't exactly entering unknown territory. The muscle memory kicked in almost instantly. Move, attack, avoid becoming a decorative stain on the floor, the usual routine. Within an hour, I realised I was having one of those conversations with myself that only certain games manage to provoke. One more run. That was unlucky. I definitely could do better. Maybe the shotgun isn't the answer. Actually, maybe the shotgun is exactly the answer. I'll just test one more build. And before you know it, the clock has moved forward considerably more than the 30 seconds the game keeps giving you. That's when I realised Ascend to Zero had sunk its hooks in. Because beneath the familiar roguelike structure sits a mechanic that fundamentally changes how you think about combat. The time stop ability. At the press of a button, everything freezes. Enemies stop moving, projectiles hang in the air, chaos becomes a photograph. You, however, keep moving. And what sounds like a simple defensive tool quickly reveals itself to be the centerpiece of the entire experience. Most survivor-style games eventually become exercises in crowd management. You run, you kite enemies, you circle endlessly, you survive by maintaining movement. Ascend to Zero introduces something different: control. You aren't simply reacting to danger, you're interrupting it. You can freeze an incoming attack, slip between projectiles, reposition, set up a better angle, or simply escape what looked like certain death. There's a surprising amount of decision-making packed into those frozen moments. The game transforms from a reflex challenge into something closer to controlled improvisation. Combat begins to feel less like panic and more like problem-solving. Many of my solutions involve sprinting away while pretending everything was proceeding according to plan. The more I played, the more I realised the time stop mechanic isn't some novelty added to a standard roguelike. The entire game is designed around it. Boss encounters are probably the clearest example. Bosses eventually unleash powerful attacks that cover large portions of the battlefield. In many games, this becomes a simple test of reaction speed. See attack, move away, hope for the best. Here, time stop creates another layer. You can freeze the encounter at exactly the right moment, reposition yourself, continue attacking, and completely alter the flow of the fight. The boss is still dangerous, the pressure remains. But you're constantly looking for opportunities to manipulate the battlefield rather than simply endure it. And that's where Ascend to Zero starts to establish its own identity, because despite the constant action, the game rewards thinking. The best runs aren't always the ones where your damage numbers become ridiculous. They're often the ones where you make the smarter decisions. Of course, no roguelike survives on mechanics alone. Eventually, players want progression. They want upgrades. They want increasingly ridiculous ways to turn enemies into scrap metal. Thankfully, Ascend to Zero seems to understand that. You begin relatively modestly. One weapon, limited options, limited power, limited confidence. Then the game starts opening doors. The weapon variety is substantial: knives, axes, spears, shotguns, rifles, cannons, magic wands. And naturally, because this is a roguelike, things become increasingly chaotic once multiple weapons enter the equation. At first, you're carefully selecting equipment. A few runs later, you're effectively operating a travelling weapons exhibition. Projectiles are flying everywhere, enemies are evaporating, and somehow you're still desperately trying not to get hit. It's glorious. What I particularly enjoyed was how builds gradually take shape. The game introduces tech chips alongside weapons and equipment upgrades, giving you opportunities to customize how your character develops. That's where experimentation starts becoming genuinely addictive. You're not simply asking whether a weapon is powerful, you're asking how it interacts with everything else. What happens if I combine this with that? What if I focus entirely on ranged combat? Could a melee build actually work? Would a different character completely change the strategy? These questions become the fuel that powers the next run, and the run after that, and the run after that. Because every defeat tends to reveal a new possibility rather than a dead end. That's an important distinction. The strongest roguelikes create a feeling that failure is useful. You lose, but you learn something, you unlock something, you discover a better approach. Ascend to Zero appears to understand that principle very well. Early on, the game can feel overwhelming. Enemy numbers increase quickly, the timer creates pressure, resources feel scarce. Your character occasionally resembles someone trying to survive a natural disaster, armed with little more than optimism. But then the upgrades begin stacking, you become stronger, your options expand, the battlefield that once felt intimidating gradually becomes manageable, until eventually you're carving through situations that would have ended a run 20 minutes earlier. That sense of progression is incredibly satisfying. Not because the game becomes easy, because you can clearly feel yourself improving alongside the character. And perhaps that's why the 30-second loop works so well. It sounds restrictive on paper. In practice, it creates momentum. Every run has purpose, every run produces something, every run nudges you forward. There's very little downtime, very little wasted effort. The game constantly encourages another attempt, because each attempt feels meaningful. Ascend to Zero takes a genre that's become increasingly crowded and gives it a genuinely distinctive centerpiece. The time stop mechanic isn't a gimmick, it's the foundation. Everything else grows around it. Combat feels faster because of it, more strategic because of it, more engaging because of it. The progression systems provide plenty of reasons to experiment. The weapon variety keeps runs fresh. And perhaps most importantly, the game repeatedly triggered that dangerous thought every developer wants players to have. I can do better next time. Based on what I've played so far, Flyway Games may have found a clever way to stand out in a genre where standing out becomes harder every year. The countdown to extinction has started. Thankfully, stopping time is an option.